Hello and welcome. My name is Adam Sandman. Thanks for joining today's webinar on Spira 6.7, the new source code management functionality and tools for developers. I'm going to get started in about 2 minutes. Just let some of our last minute stragglers arrive. We will be recording this demonstration and webinar, so if you are not able to make it the whole way through, or if someone in your team couldn't make it, we will be recording it, making it available. There's also a session this afternoon in the afternoon time zones as well at 3 p.m. Eastern. So for those with colleagues in California or Western time zones, again, feel free to share that information with them. Okay, so I said we'll get started in just a minute. While we're waiting, I'm just going to show the agenda and start going through what we'll be covering today. Okay, Okay, so we're going to be looking at Spira 6.7, and the focus of 6.7 for this webinar anyway is the source code management enhancements. There are some other features in 6.7 as well that we released, but they're not being covered today. If you go to our blogs, you'll see them. We're also going to be doing a preview as well as the 6.7 functionality, which is already live, with some of the new functionality coming out in 6.7.1. And that's coming out in February in about 4 weeks. So second Saturday of February for cloud customers and around the same time for download customers. And there are some enhancements in that. They're on our blog, but one of the ones that's really key and the focus of today's viewing will be the pull request functionality. So let's get started then. Okay, source code management. Before we look at Spira and the screens and what's changed in 6.7 and 6.7.1, I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview, especially for those who are not as familiar with Spira and the source code management functionality, to show you what we offer. So first of all, we do offer an extensible and very open platform. And back to our philosophy as a company of harmony, we actually offer different options depending on if you're hosted with us or if you're installing it locally. So if you're hosted with us, we offer you, using our Toravault cloud platform, we offer you Subversion or Git. Subversion is pretty much was the most popular source code management tool prior to Git coming on the scene. Git, of course, by now is the most popular, and everyone I think uses Git these days. So we do offer for our cloud platform Git and Subversion. And you may ask, why would I use Subversion? Well, there are a couple of reasons. In some clients, they have very large binary files, like a website with large pictures or videos. You can use Git for that, but there are some weird quirks we found. So some clients prefer to use that Subversion for some of their large binary projects. Things like gaming platforms will use it. And there are some companies that are still using Subversion just because that's what their code base was using. And so it's a legacy project, it's on Subversion, and they want some centralized control, whereas Git allows you to be decentralized. So there are a couple of reasons why you might want to use Subversion, but for honestly, for most new projects and most teams in general, everyone's using Git. And we use Git for most of our development, except for our website, which is on Subversion. And you can use either our Toravault Subversion or Git, or if you are using another platform like Bitbucket or GitHub or GitLab, you can swap out Toravault for any publicly accessible cloud-based Subversion or Git hosting system. So you do have that option as well. Now, if you're on-premise, on the other side of the equation, on the right-hand side, you have even more options, because if you're on-premise, we have libraries you can download for various different providers. You can connect Spira and Team and Spira Plan, which I'll call Spira from here on out, to both Git and Subversion, but also to Microsoft's TFS, and that's really the old school TFS, because most new projects in Azure DevOps are using Git, but there are some old school ones that are using the old TFS source code provider. So we do support that for on-premise. We have some clients who are using Mercurial, which was a competitor to Git, but really you don't see as much anymore. That's available. Some gaming companies use the tool that used to be known as Perforce, that's now known as Helix. That's an option as well. And then, of course, some legacy clients might be using CVS or Visual Source Safe, and those are options too. So you have those options as well if that will be appropriate. But most people are using Git, then Subversion, then all the others. And there are different providers for these different tools. The other thing that's nice within Spira is the UI is the same within Spira, regardless of which of these you're using. So we've designed the system to abstract away the differences. Because normally, if you were using GitHub, you'd have Git. If you're using Subversion, you'd have something like SourceForge, and Perforce has its own UI. So for your developers, you have a unified UI now for doing the standard operations in source code management, tying it to things in Spira, Test, or Team or Plan. and it doesn't matter which provider you're using, it's always the same. So that's some of the different connectors we use. So focusing on both Subversion and Git as the two primary options that we offer, there are two models. If you're using Subversion, this is the model you'll typically use. It's called trunk-based development. You do all of your main development work in the trunk branch. You create folders for branches, you create a folder for tags. They're just folders, and under those you create named branch and tag folders. And this is because Subversion doesn't really handle branches properly or natively. It mirrors them using folders. And so by having this standardized folder structure, you can effectively simulate branches and tags. And that's the way Subversion works. We've designed Spira and Taravault to be able to abstract away this so we can actually represent them as real branches. So if you are using Subversion in Spira, you will see them as actual branches. For Git, it's a bit more complicated because you have a local and a remote set of repositories. When you're using Spira, Spira is actually looking at the remote repository, often called the origin. That's the remote repository that developers are pushing to. So in Git, you're working locally, you're adding files, making changes, you're committing changes, but that's all local. And then you push the changes to the remote repository and you fetch or pull changes from the remote repository. And a pull is really a fetch and a merge, but people often call it a pull. And so that's a typical working model in Git. So with the Spira, you'll be looking at the remote repository and your developers will be working local. So they may be making changes that won't appear in Spira, and that's normal. When they finish their branches, they'll push those changes and that branch then shows up in the remote repository. So that's one thing to bear in mind. If you're looking in Spira, your developers will need to push the code for it to appear in Spira in the remote. There are different workflows available for Spira, for Git. We recommend, and we use internally, one called Git Flow. Git Flow is nice because there are a lot of tools now that actually enforce the methodology and prevent you like committing code into master, committing code into the develop branch. I'll show you what those mean in a minute. The tools actually make it easier to use Git, because one of the problems we found with teams who moved from Subversion to Git was they got into all kinds of troubles because there's so much power in Git, and like in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. They found that, we found that people would often do things that were bad, like detaching the head or merging the wrong direction or rebasing. You can get into all kinds of pickles with Git. So Git Flow actually simplifies the use of Git. It forces you to work in certain branches. It forces you to merge in certain directions and prevents you pretty much merging in incorrect ways. So we recommend Git Flow. There are some other options you'll see here. The nice thing with Git Flow is that the tools actually, like Git Kraken or Git Tower or Fork, most of the clients now actually enforce it. And the naming conventions are also typically becoming standard now as well with Git Flow. So in the sample that we'll see in the rest of the demo, we're using the Git Flow conventions. And the Git Flow conventions are as follows. You have a branch that's either called master or main. Some tools are switched over to main. Either way, master or main, that's the production code. You don't directly make any changes into master or main, and I'll call it master here, but I may refer to it main later on. And then you have the main line of development. That's called the develop branch. That's where all the code that developers are working on lives. That's pre-production code. It's not in the wild. So master is going to be code that's in production that your users are using. Develop is the code that your developers are working on. But you typically don't, for the most part, commit any changes directly into master or develop. Instead, what you do is you take the current work of development called develop, and you make a new branch called feature something, feature / something. You make the feature, you will code the changes, do whatever's going on in that branch. If it's a feature branch, it may be requirements, it may be tasks, could be some bug fixes, so some incidents as well. Once that's done, you finish by merging it into develop. And then at the end, and all developers merge all of their features into develop. That's all integrated. CI does its magic. It's all built. Unit tests pass. At some point, you're ready to release. The release manager decides to release, and that develop is then finally merged into master. So only develop gets merged into master, and it's only done, I think, when you're at the ready to release point. And master represents what's live in production. And then for example, we actually have another CI tool that builds master, so we always have a living, breathing version of what's out in the wild as well. The other option is if you have a bug fix, and the bug fix needs to be applied immediately to what's in production because it's like a security bug or a really important defect, you can create a hotfix, and a hotfix is a new branch that comes off of master, not off develop,
because it's got to come off the production code, and you don't want to be polluted by anything that's not in the wild yet. You make the necessary bug fix, commit that, and then you merge that hot fix back into master, and also a copy gets merged into develop so that develop is in sync. So that's the typical flow with Git Flow. That's how I recommend you use Git. We do that ourselves at Inflectra. It's working really well for us. But Spira doesn't really care what methodology you use. But this is some of the naming conventions you're going to see in the rest of the demo. So I thought it was worth explaining it. Okay, so that's some background on source code, background on Git. Let's look at how Spira has been changed. So the focus in 6.7, and it is live as of December, is to, well, first of all, redesign all the screens to make them more usable, to provide for the first time code difference viewing functionality natively in Spira. Also, we've completely written the back end to our source code modules so that the performance is much better, the speed of retrieving the branches, the commits, linking to associations, builds, all of that integration is just much faster. The UI is much faster and responsive, and you'll see that in the live demo. So the first thing we did is we've changed the navigation. So before, for those who've been using the tool for a while, you will notice that we had under the tracking menu a one entry called source code. We also had 5 entries under the testing for testers. So we realized that it didn't make sense to have all this functionality buried under the source code section. So we've now broken out a new section called developing. So in the same way that you have planning, testing, and tracking, we now have developing. And we've now split this out into 3 areas. The source code view, which is the source code file system view, which is all you had before in the old version. We have a commit view, which is what you're seeing here. And then we've added in 6.7.1, which I'll be previewing, a new section called pull requests. So you can see pull requests as well. So the developers now have 3 menu entries to go to and take you right to the appropriate place, whether it's the source code file system, whether it's the commit list, or whether it's the pull requests. And the tracking menu has got 1 less entry as well. Okay, so that's the menu. Now, once you get to the menu, you're going to click on, say, commits. You're going to come to the commit page. The commit page is brand new. There was a commit page before under source code. It wasn't very good. We've redesigned it. It now is much faster. It allows much better filtering and sorting. The other thing you'll notice right away is that we've also got hyperlinks for all the artifacts. So if you're looking through the list of most recent revisions and you see that someone's fixed an incident, like incident 12 has been fixed here, fixed quote handling, or incident 3, fixed clicking on a link, well, before you had to click on the revision, remember what incident it was you wanted to look at, go to the associations tab, and we still have all that. But now I can just click on the link. It goes straight to incident 3. And like, oh, okay, that was the bug. So again, trying to make it faster and easier. You can go straight from this commit list. I can filter by date, see the most recent commits that have happened in this particular branch. You can change the branch, which we'll see. And then I can go straight to the items. If I don't want to look at the defect or the requirement directly, we also have updated the detail pages. So these are the pages you get to when you click on a source code commit or revision. We call it commit. Commit's the name in Git. Revision is the name in Subversion. We've renamed them to be Git-centric, but it does work just as well with Subversion, so don't worry. So on this page, you've got the navigation. You can quickly click between the different commits. And when you do that, it will load the data really quickly. We've improved the speed of that. We've also added the hyperlinks on this page. We've streamlined the page, laid things out much nicer so you can get to the most important information. We've gotten rid of a lot of the extraneous stuff. So you can now see the commit, the message, the links go straight to the items, any build. So if you have a Jenkins job running and it built this, you have a link right to the build that this commit's part of. You can see the files right here. You can see the branches that this commit lives in, because you may have a commit that's in a feature branch. It gets merged into develop. It gets merged into master. Wouldn't it be nice to know which of those has been done? Well, you can do that now. You go to the branches tab and you can see which branches it's in. That's really nice too. And if it's been built on different machines, you'll see different builds. And then the associations tab lets you see where it's linked to. Now, this has been completely redone. We've redesigned all the associations tabs on the source code module to use the brand new ones that we have elsewhere in the application. Before they were really clunky. You couldn't sort the associations, you couldn't filter. To add them, you had to know the ID. You couldn't search in the application, so it was really archaic. So we've completely revamped these pages. So now you can look on a source code commit, and you can look at the associations that are already there. And if a developer forgot to tag the commit with the artifact, you can use the add button to add an association afterwards. And that's then stored natively in Spira. Now, the other really important thing is, let me go back a second. You've got the code. You want to be able to see
right here. What changed, right? This is a commit. It's got 2 file changes. Well, what actually changed? So we've now got difference viewing inside of Spira. So you can now view the code changes, and you can view that both from a what we call the unified view, where it's all in one big file with the adds and removes and changes, or a split view where you can see it side by side. Most the Diff tools nowadays provide both options, so we just followed suit. It's pretty standard. You've got the line numbers. We also have the option to collapse sections. So if you've got a large file, you don't have to see the whole thing. So it's really nice. It lets you see exactly what developers have been up to. And this is not just for developers. I mean, developers obviously want to know what's going on, but testers, the next time the developer tells you, oh, I committed the code, it's in the build, you should fix that bug, you can look at what they did directly from Spira and see, wait a second, it's not in that build, it's in the wrong branch. You didn't touch that file. You did touch the file, but I don't see how you fixed it. That doesn't make any sense to me. So it keeps everyone honest. And also from an audit standpoint, you can make sure now when you commit code, you sign a revision, you release a piece of software, and something goes wrong, you've got an audit trail, not just of the requirements to the tests, but to the code and to the actual code, which is really nice. So the new views make it really good to have everyone operating off the same sheet of music. Testers, developers, managers, audit people, whoever it is that you need to look at these things. Now, that's what's in 6.7. Everything up until this point is currently live. So if you have Spira team or plan, go ahead and start using it. If you have a Spira test, feel free to contact our sales team and we can upgrade you, not a problem. But if you are looking to what's coming in about a month's time, then let's look ahead at the 6.7.1 sneak peek. So in the new version, we have this third menu entry, pull requests. And a pull request, which is also really a merge request, is also a code review task. So what is it? It's a way for us to manage in Spira the activities around merging something from, let's say, a feature branch, going back to our Git methodology, Git Flow, into the develop branch. And maybe you even do a pull request and formally review develop before it goes into main or master. Typically, it's from a feature branch into develop, though. And so you create a pull request. And for Spira, it's basically a type of task. So it's in the task module. You can go, we should look at this in the administration. You can just see which task types are using it. When you designate a task type as a pull request, it has this different icon. And when you go to the new pull request page, you can now create a pull request very easily. You haven't got to go create a task and do any manual linking. It's fully automated. You say, okay, I'm going to create a pull request from one branch to the next branch, to the branch it's going to merge into. Now, Spira doesn't enforce a methodology, so you could go from develop back to a feature branch. That probably isn't a good idea. So definitely, you need to follow whatever methodology you're using. And so in this case, we're merging from a feature branch in Sprint 2 into our main development branch. When you do that, it's going to automatically give it a name based on that, which you can change. You then will typically want to choose the release. So I would choose either the release or the sprint, like Sprint 2 that's in the release, and then I assign the owner. The owner is the person who's going to be reviewing my pull request, who's going to be reviewing my code, and to make sure that the code is ready for merging. It's not the person who did the work. It's not the person who wrote the code. It should be anyone but that, in fact. Okay, so you do that. Now you've got your pull request. We've got 3 here in this example screen. And when you go to the pull request, you'll now be able to see not only the standard task page. This is the task. It's a pull request task. You can see we have other regular tasks that may also be there. But you also have this new tab called commits. And that commits tab will let you see all the revisions that are in the new branch. So my feature branch, that are not in develop, or in this example, all the ones that are in develop that have not yet merged into main. Whatever the merge direction is, it will show you everything that needs to be merged. And you can then use the existing commit view and file view to see all the code that needs to be merged. And then, because it's a task, you can agree, oh yeah, this is good. We can complete the task, do the merge. Or, oh no, there's actually some issues here. I don't like the way that code style has been written. It violates our coding standards. I see a null reference issue that could happen. You can basically then use the task comments to basically have a discussion and use the existing task comments and instant messenger to communicate with the person who wrote the code and actually make sure that you truly do agree. And at some point, once your code review is done, all the comments have been addressed, now you can do the merge. So it's a way to centralize the code reviewing and the viewing of all the code to be merged. And that is the new functionality. So that's enough PowerPoint. Let's move into the live application. And while we're doing that, if you want to start writing your questions, if you have any, feel free. But let's go into the live application. So Move this window out the way. Okay, so this is our sample system. And this is actually running 6.7.1. So it's got all the 6.7 changes and all the 6.7.1 changes. So there's a preview version. So if it blows up, that's okay. So let's look at what's new in this version. So first of all, when you come into the homepage, you come to the development dashboard, which obviously existed before. You'll notice that we now have a recent commits widget as well as a graph. So we've always had a graph where you can see the commits, but we had a recent commits widget that used to be on the source code page, and it made no sense to be there. So we've now moved this right where it should be in the main dashboard. So you can see the 5 most recent commits, and you can then click on them quickly. So I can see from this page what's been committed, and how many commits, and then go straight to them. Now this is obviously not a very busy project, it's a demo. If I go to one of our live projects, you can see here, this is a bit more accurate, a bit more useful and meaningful. That's the kind of heat map you'll get. So the way the graph works is, the more commits you have, the lighter the color, and then the lower number, the less commits, the darker the color. So the height of the bar determines the color we use. So you can see how many commits have happened each day, and you can see are our number of commits accelerating or decelerating. So it can be very useful if you're going into a release. You probably want the number of commits to be decelerating as you're fixing things and not making changes to this code at the last minute. But you can see the number of changes you've made in this particular branch. You can change the branch, and here you can see we're actually using the Git Flow naming conventions, where we have feature branches and we have production branches, we have master, we've developed. There aren't any hotfixes right now. So we actually follow Git Flow ourselves. To go back to our demo version, we have the same situation. These are all our branches. And so the new version of Spira also handles the hierarchy. So previously, we just had a list of branches. It was a big, long, flat list. And now we're making it more meaningful by taking the prefix, the feature slash, the hotfix slash, release or production, stable, whatever other folder structures you're using, and we now represent that visually. So it makes Spira a much more visual tool to work with. Now, these branch names are just folder names. So if you wanted to use Subversion and have the same structure, you could in theory do that too. But generally with Subversion, it's just going to be a list of named branches. So let's look at the main changes. So if we go into the artifact menu, as I mentioned, you've got the source code, the commits, and the pull requests. Before we dive into that, the other change that will be apparent will be in the administration. If you go into task types for the current template, there's a new column visible. Give it a second to load, and that column will let you see, is this type a pull request? So as of right now in the sample system, when you create a new project or clone an existing one, or upgrade from an older version, the pull request type did exist already, and we had already set that behind the scenes, that it wasn't visible to you that it was a pull request type. Now code review is also there, it is not. So if you want to have multiple different types of pull requests, you can make, for example, code review, make that a pull request. If you make this setting yes, it will appear in the option for the pull request creation. Otherwise, it will only be in the regular task section. We're going to come back to that when we look at pull requests, but this is in the administration menu, so you need to make sure that's set up correctly. You can also have, therefore, different workflows, so that way you can create a different workflow for your pull request from your other tasks. Okay, so let's go now into source code. So from the development menu, we can go into source code. And source code will show us the file system. So this is the file system view. This hasn't changed dramatically since the last version, except that it's a lot faster. We've also added things like tooltips, which are better than before. And if you navigate around, you'll see the speed is a lot better. You can browse the repo. We have the icons to show you the file type, tooltips to show you the path. We've got the latest commit, the latest date of it being edited, the file size is there. So a lot of good, useful information. You can filter by any of the various fields. So we go to the root. We also now do show the folders in the view to be consistent with the other folder views in Spira. Previously in the source code module, these were hidden. So now it's consistent with the rest. And you can search in here for README like that. So you've got filtering, filter by size, filter by the commit, date ranges, all that's good here. You can clone your code, and that means you can then connect using something like Git Kraken or Git Tower or whatever, WinGit, whatever tool you're using to connect to the repo. If it's Subversion or Git, whichever one it is, you would use that. So you can connect right here, and then you can choose the branch. So right now we're looking at develop branch. If you want to look at main branch, just go to main, changes. Won't change dramatically, just may change the latest revision. If I go to, let's say, a feature branch, let me get some code that's got a bit more yeah, you'll see that the numbers are changing. So the numbers change, and there's a hotfix branch. So you can view the different branches, and you can see the different code, the tests, the folders, all the information is going to be here. And when you change the branch, it will change what files are visible depending on if those files only exist in that branch. It will also change the latest commit depending on what was committed. And if you want to look at it, if you want to look at a particular line of code in a file, you can just go to the folder, you click on the file, and that takes you into the file detail page. The file detail page lets you see a preview of the file. We do have syntax highlighting, of course, for most common file types. This is a Java file, so this is the syntax highlighting for Java. You can browse the folder structure. This is new. You can also browse the file structure of the folder. So you can browse the entire repository without having to go back to the list page. This previously was not possible. The UI didn't really allow that. It's much better. And we've got some nice samples available so you can see how the coloration looks for different file types. So C++, C#. If you're doing feature files for BDD, Java files, JSON, PHP, Perl, Python, Ruby, SV, and if you've got a graphics file, YAML files even, if you've got an SVG or an image file, you can even see the images too. So that's really nice. So we do have file viewing for all the major types, and then you can look at the history, and that will show you any revisions. Now, these are not code files, so let's look at some revisions to get some code files. So let's go over here. Okay, we've got 3 revisions of this file. And you can click on any of the revisions now and see what happens. Let's click on revision 3, and that will show me what changed in revision 3 for this file. If I want to see the changes, I can just look here in the changes tab, and I can see, oh, I see, I changed the attributes, I changed the version number. You can see here that all the code changes line by line. This is the split view. I can also see the unified view as well. I can also, do I want to show all the lines of code or some of the lines of code? This is useful if you've got a very long file. If we have large numbers of lines that haven't changed, like 1 through 7 haven't changed, you can show those or hide those. Typically with small files, you want to see the whole thing because it's useful to see the line numbers and the context. For big files, it becomes unwieldy. So you'll want to be able to hide the unchanged lines. That way all the changes are compressed together. And again, we have both the split view and the unified view, which is nice. Of course, you could also see the old version and the new version in their entirety if you want to see what it looked like before and after. This functionality is available for any of the text file types. You can, of course, open the raw file if you want to see it live and download it. Now, if you want to get to the revision and see all the files that were changed, you can click on this link here, revision 3, or this link here, revision 3, for the commit. That will take you to the commit page for all the file changes. So this is just a change to that file in this commit. This will take me to the commit where I can see everything that changed in this commit. This is where I will see why did we change these 2 files? Well, it's to fix this bug, implement this feature. This is going to give you the traceability from the commit to the artifact in Spira. And you can either click on a link here, like this one, so requirement 5. I'll control click on that one, it brings it up over here, or you can go to the associations tab and you can just browse the changes. So you can see here, there's 4 changes, 3 incidents and 1 requirement, and you can see those right here. So you can either just browse them or you can click on them. Now you may be wondering, why are the 3 hyperlinks here, instance 7, 8, and requirement 5, but there's 4 down here, and that doesn't make any sense. Well, there's a reason for that, and it's the reason why these 3 have checkboxes that are hidden or disabled, and this one has a checkbox that's enabled. When developers commit code, they will tag the commit with the message that tells it what happened, and hopefully they will put tokens in to designate what Spira artifact was affected. And why did we change the line of code? It wasn't because we felt like it. It's to fix a bug. It's to implement a feature. And so they'll put in these tokens, and that auto links it to this requirement and these 2 incidents. But let's say they forgot. People forget. And so instead of Spira, you can go here and do add, and you can then pick an artifact and browse the artifact tree just like anywhere else in the tool, and you can add a link. And when you do that, you're adding another link. I think I added the same requirement, which is, what were the chances? Let me add a test case. That one. Like that. Good. So you can add the links and add the comments. but it won't show up here in the commit message because this comes from the source code tool. So we're not changing the commit in any way, but we're adding links. So when you do that, what you'll see is these ones will always be available in the associations tab. They'll have checkboxes because they can be added and removed if you have permissions, whereas these ones here that come from the commit message, these are fixed by the developer. So that's why you might see more associations here in this tab than you'll see in the commit message. So it does pay to go to the associations tab, but if you run a report, all of these 5 associations will be in the report. Okay, also if you want to see which branches this commits in, you can go to the branch tab, you'll see it right here. So this commit was in a feature branch and a bunch of other branches, and then it's now been merged in. Okay, so that's the source code viewing page, and then we're browsing to files and commits and changes. You can also use the new commit listing page here, where you can see all the commits. This is all the commits in the project. I can choose the branch I'm viewing. This is the main branch. If I want to see some things that haven't yet been merged in, I might look at the develop branch. There's some newer revisions, 14, 15, and 16. These are in develop, but they're not yet merged into master or main. I can look at feature branches to see what's been worked on in sprint 2 and sprint 3. I can see what's been worked on there. I can look at a hotfix to see what if that's been merged in. So you can choose the branch, see what's there, or I can go back to a historical branch and see these are only the commits up to that release. So you can browse your commit list and you can choose by branch, like that. And if you click on the revision or commit, it's going to take you into the commit page, and you can then see the commit, the files, the branches, associations, same as we saw before. And now if I click on the specific file, I will see what changed for that file for this commit. So one way I was coming in from the file to the commit, now I'm coming into the commit to the file. In both cases, I have the ability to get to this difference view to see all the changes live in the system. So that's the source code management enhancements: difference viewing, new pages, new UI, faster, responsive, much more, more performant application. Then the last part, which is the new piece in 6.7.1, is the pull requests. So the pull request builds on top of what I just showed you and lets you track code request changes. So let's go ahead and create a pull request. So let's say I want to merge from, my hotfix into my main branch. When I do that, it automatically creates the name from the branches of the pull request. I could choose the release. Let's say this is going to release 1.2, and I'll make myself the owner just so I can see it in my assigned list. Hit create. Let me create another pull request, and I want to merge this time I want to go from develop into main because we're ready to release. That's fine. That's release 1.1. I'll make that owner someone else. Hit create. So I've got 2 different pull requests. If I go over here to tasks, I will see them. Also, you can see they're in my main task list. They've got a different icon. Now you may wonder, well, what's the difference between these 2 pages? Well, the task page is great because it shows you all the tasks, and you could then see my entire workload as a developer. I can filter by, my name and see everything that's assigned to me, or everything for Fred, and see what Fred's got. So that's good. I can see everything he has to work on. I can see it in a Kanban board and so on. So for resource management, it's great. But there's a couple of columns that we don't see here. So we don't see the branches. I can only see the standard task fields. So the pull request will only show you the pull request types, but it does also let you see the branches. So if you want to see everything that's being merged into main, or everything that's being merged from develop, you've got the ability to filter by these sort by these extra fields. So this is basically a dedicated pull request view, which will only contain a subset of the tasks. Let's look at this one: merge develop into main. This is my my pull request. It's not started. I can look here and see my commit view. It's got all the other fields you'd expect from a task. And if I go to commits, it's automatically showing me these are the 4 root commits that have been created in develop and that need to be merged into main. So before we merge into main, I need to review these 4 commits, make sure that all these requirements and tasks and defects, whatever's in here, have been adequately covered, and make sure that the code is good. And so what I would do is I'll just open up one of these. Let's open up commit 13 over here. And I've got some files. Look at that. Look at that. So I can review my files, review all the changes, and let's pretend let's say there's an issue. Maybe I want them to change something. Go in here and add a comment. I don't like the look. And you can use the code highlighting to put the code in like that. That's the file name, and maybe we'll actually put a code snippet in here. So we can use the existing functionality we have. Let's say it's What do we not like? Let's say we don't like this line of code for whatever reason. This is bad. So we can then add the comment, assign it back to sysadmin who created the pull request. We have a conversation, we figure it out, and also we have the instant messenger right here, so we can communicate in real time if we want, and post the comments using all the standard functionality. And at some point, we're happy with this pull request, and now it gets to commit it, start the task, and then we will then commit the task, and it's done. And now that pull request is ready to merge. So it lets you track the work, and you can decide if you want to track effort, how much time it was to do the code reviews. Some clients might want to track the time for code review and include that in their estimates. Other clients might not. So in which case, you'll want to look at the workflow for the pull request tasks and make sure that it matches what you need to capture. But that's the functionality for pull request management. And now if I go back to my pull request list, you'll see that one has been marked as completed. And if you go to the My page, yep, I'm a sysadmin, I would see that like any other task in my assigned tasks, as well as the email notification that I would get, and it's got the different icon type. So if your users are not always in the system, they're going to get the email notifications, they're going to come to the My page and be prompted to work on whichever code review action needs to be done. So this lets us track and manage all the code reviews in the system, in the project. So that's today's presentation on what's new in Spira 6.7 and 6.7.1. 6.7 is already out. If you're on premise and you haven't upgraded, I would recommend you do so. If you're on 6.7 in cloud, you will get the latest version of 6.7.1 in February, and you'll get to access the pull request functionality. You can start previewing it using regular tasks, but it'll be much easier when the new version's out, which makes it all automated and streamlined. So thanks so much for attending. If you have any questions, just let us know, and I hope to see you at a future Inflectra webinar.